Turner Broadcasting and chairman of the United Nations Foundation.
I love this planet. It's worth saving. I mean, it's worth saving. You know, I know we're the same people that did the Holocaust, but we also did the Mona Lisa and Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. I mean, there's so much wonderful. This world is, we can't turn it into a cinder. We've got to protect it for ourselves and for our children, and it's worth fighting for. And that's all I'm doing, is trying to fight to help save humanity.
Ted Turner for the hour. Funding for Charlie Rose has been provided by the following. $1 million partnership with the United Methodist Church and Lutheran World Relief to fight malaria. The Protestant groups have been working overseas to fight poverty and prevent disease for more than a century. Ted Turner created the United Nations Foundation 10 years ago with a historic $1 billion gift to support UN causes and activities. I am pleased to have him here back at this table. Welcome.
Good to be here, Charlie.
So you were there today. You gave a speech.
Lunch.
What did you tell them?
Well, I was there to support, primarily to support the United Nations Millennium Goal of reducing poverty in half by 2015, which they are close to on track to do. And then I had some other thoughts that I shared with the, mostly in the dining room at lunch, were the different ambassadors to the UN from most of the countries in the world. So it was a pretty prestigious audience.
You wanted to motivate them about the possibilities of eliminating disease and poverty?
Well, yes, and nuclear weapons, and get control of global warming before it's too late, and stabilize the population, and stop overfishing the oceans, which are just about on the verge of collapse as far as our ocean fisheries are concerned, and a couple other smaller things. I talked about Security Council reform, which is badly needed.
What do you want to do there?
I'd like to see the permanent members increase from 5 to 10.
And who, you have candidates you'd like to see? Brazil?
Yeah.
Turkey?
No.
No. Brazil? Japan?
Yes.
That's 2. Who else is on your list?
Who's the second most populous nation in the world?
India.
India.
That's 3.
What's the largest Muslim nation in the world?
Indonesia.
Indonesia.
That's 4.
There you go. And
how am I doing so far?
Biggest country in Africa? Africa needs representation.
Biggest country in Africa would be Congo?
No.
Who is?
Nigeria is the
Nigeria.
biggest.
Okay.
But it could be either South Africa or Nigeria. Let the Africans decide. And then the last, but we started with Brazil. Or Argentina, depending on what the South American countries wanted to do.
Here is the question, the big question about you. Why are you the way you are?
Why are you the way you are? I mean, it's in my genes.
Yeah, I know. So what's in your genes? I mean,
I don't know.
There's
I
a
haven't
guy
had
who's
my genes checked.
Passionate. You haven't had them checked? Why not?
I don't know. I mean, what would that teach you? I mean,
It'll teach you what your genes are.
I just am what I am. I'm like Pogo.
Yes, but, you know, wouldn't you want to know if you might be, you know, why you are the way you are, what disease you might be inclined? So if you caught it a little bit earlier, you might...
Whatever it is, I like it.
Yeah.
Because I like trying to make things better, whatever they are. When I was in the news business, I tried to make it better. You know, I'm in the restaurant business, I try and make it better. You know, I just, in my relationships with my children, I try and do better. You know, I just can't help it. And when I was a boy growing up, my church and my school, my parents all said, do the best you can. You know, all I'm doing is following orders.
All right. So it's in your DNA. I mean, you look at whatever the circumstances that made you who you are, you would find somebody who loved to compete in business and loved to win in business, loved to compete in sailing and loved to win in sailing.
Don't forget baseball.
Baseball, too. Hard-driving Atlanta entrepreneur who wanted to win, yet at the same time, you know, you weren't just one more businessman. You weren't just one more media tycoon. You were a guy out there saying, we got to change the world. We got to do something about the environment, about the planet.
Ever heard of Rotary?
Of course, Rotary clubs.
Rotary clubs. Well, my father was a Rotarian, and I was a Rotarian when I was in Macon, Georgia, as a very young man. And Rotary's motto is, he profits most who serves the best. And that was my motto through life, and it still is. It's Rotary's motto. And who serves the best profits the most. I believe that. It certainly worked for me. And also, just by being honest and having a lot of integrity, that saves you a lot of trouble. You know, a lot of these businessmen who cut corners, you know, they end up in jail, embarrassed and disgraced. I didn't want that.
What do you think of the credit crisis we're in now?
You know, I think it's a mess.
And why is it a mess?
Well, because I think what happened is people were borrowing too much money on their houses. You know,
clearly they're doing that.
My house is paid for. I mean, it has been. I mean, I don't believe, you know, I think having equity in your home is a good thing. I don't believe in spending every penny you have. When I was making $80 a week after taxes were taken out of 20, when I was 21, I saved $10 a week and lived on $70. I mean, I've always saved. I believe that was the thing. It was one my father taught me that, too.
He's the most influential person in your life?
My father.
He was?
Yeah.
And did his death, did it inspire you? Was it a motivation for you? I mean, clearly his life was, but his death, too? I
don't know. It was horrible because, you know, I felt like he was my best friend, and it was a terrible loss, and I tried not to dwell on it. Right after, as soon as when he passed away, I went to work even harder and worked 18 hours a day so I wouldn't have to think about it because it was just too painful. If I'd have just sat down in a chair in a room and thought about it, I would have, it might have killed me. It was so painful.
And the only way to get at the pain was just work as hard as you possibly could.
Well, try and get it out of your mind by working so hard that you forget it. And then do that for a year, and then you get over it. And that's basically the way I've gone through the other tragic things that happened in my life.
Like what?
The loss of my sister.
Right.
And the failure of my marriages.
Just dive into work and try to forget it.
Right.
But with your dad, I mean, I've always assumed the will to win came not only for yourself and to show him, but for him.
Well, not completely. It was for myself, too.
Well, it started off with you, but But in addition, it was, you know.
I wanted him to think I was worthwhile, like every son does.
Like all of us do, don't we?
Yeah.
It's a powerful bond, isn't it?
Well, it wasn't just my father, too, but I wanted to impress my mother, you know, and she lived for quite a while, and we were very close, and it was great to have her be proud of me.
Look at what's happened to you. I want to come to all these issues you care about in just a moment, but let's just put it in context. I mean, you created CNN.
Right.
I remember. You wanted to...
Don't forget the Cartoon Network and Turner Classic
Movies. I haven't got that either. No.
But CNN was more so.
I remember when you had Channel 17. So,
I know.
You know.
There you
go. Remember when you created CNN and you wanted me to come work for you.
That's right.
And then it's now run by somebody else.
Yeah.
How hard is that for you?
Hard. Very hard. It's very hard. But when I merged with Time Warner, I didn't think that there was any way that they could squeeze me out. And but when they merged with AOL, I was diluted down to where they could, and they did. So that's just I took a chance and I lost. You know, I mean,
took a chance that you could
hardly anybody wins all the time. I've won more than most, so I'm not going to complain about it. I've pretty well gotten over it, but it still hurts.
Because your baby belongs to somebody else.
I mean, you know, that's only natural, isn't it?
Of course it is. You know, and all the...
But I'm trying to be a good sport about it. I'm not crying. I'm out working at the UN helping, and I started a new restaurant business with a partner, and I'm really proud of that.
That's the hardest business you could have ever gotten into.
I know, but I wanted to... The television business was relatively easy.
Compared to selling
the restaurant business. There are no barriers to entry the restaurant business, so everybody with $200,000 and a kitchen can be a restaurateur. I mean, it's tough. But I wanted to do something tough. I wanted to do something tough because then, and I wanted to be a success in the restaurant business, you know, because television was relatively easy because the barriers to entry were very high. At the time I came into it, there were only really 3 people in it. You know, CBS, NBC, and ABC. So there was an unmet need for competition to them.
But you scared the hell out of them. You did.
Well, I did.
You know, they were. You know, and
if they were so big though, they didn't. I didn't.
They need not be scared.
I used to say I spent a lot of time trying to kick the networks, and at the end of 10 years, what I had to show for it, broken toes. I didn't hurt them that bad. There was room for another company in the business.
Yeah. But could it have turned out much better for you?
Than it has?
Yeah.
Well,
no,
I don't sit around
no, I know, but just talk to me.
Moping about what could have happened.
I'm not talking about moping. I'm just asking a question. Could it have turned out much better?
Sure, it could have turned out better, and it could have turned out worse.
If they didn't make the AOL deal, you would have been better off.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that was a huge...
Financially, too. Oh, that was a catastrophe.
Yeah. How much...
I smelled it a little bit, but I didn't smell it enough to try and block it, and I probably couldn't have blocked it even so, and my friends and advisors all thought it was the right thing to do. So
who are we talking about when we say friends and advisors? Is Mike
there were
Milken,
four different people that I asked about it, and Milken was one of them.
Was Malone one of them?
Malone was one of them.
That's 2 out of 4.
Pretty good guessing.
Yeah. Who are the other 2?
Oh, it doesn't matter. But
okay, and they all said, here's what they said to you.
We got to do it.
You got to do it because you, Ted, are too small. These are big fish, and this is a big pond. And in order to compete in the big pond, you got to
have an internet.
Saddle up with somebody else.
It's, yes.
And they were wrong.
Well, that's right. But people are wrong sometimes. And everybody makes some mistakes. Well, that was the biggest mistake for me. But at least mostly what I did worked out.
All right. There are others who sort of, Barry Diller, for example.
He's having trouble right now.
Well, I know. He and Malone are having a little tussle.
That's right.
But he just
not
won in
long
court.
Ago, the guy from Warner Brothers got canned at Yahoo or stepped down. So I'm not the only one.
Well, but you were the founder. These guys.
I know.
These guys were.
That's true.
And Barry was a founder in part. He put a business together. But I'm surprised you haven't wanted to. I mean, entertainment was in your blood.
It is. It still is.
You're a natural. You're out there building.
Walk down the street here in New York, coming here. I was humming the words to "Give My Regards to Broadway."
Let me hear
that
you.
was my song.
Let me hear you do that a bit.
Give my regards to Broadway. Remember me to Harold Square. I own that movie, 42nd Street. It was in the Warner Library.
I know.
Tell all the gang on 42nd Street that I will soon be there. There's a statue of me in Madame Tussauds, and it's on 42nd Street right at Times Square.
You go by and see it.
It's
there you
funny.
are in all your wax.
That's right. And we got a restaurant on 51st Street. You can stop there, Ted's Montana Grill. The food's
but are
great,
they any
and the
good?
prices are reasonable.
Is it good?
I'm going to have dinner there tonight.
Are you really? You're going to eat there tonight? I'll let you go. You got good company coming?
I got a friend.
There you go. I've got a... Did you ever own that song? I've got a friend.
I didn't even know that was a song, but I had the Wizard of Oz for a while too. I mean, I can sing songs all night.
All right, let me have a little bit of the Wizard of Oz.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. I can just keep going.
Oh, well, go. Give me another. Give me one more.
Another song?
Another song.
Sun shines bright on my old Kentucky home. It's summer, the cotton is high. The corn stands ripe in the meadow in the vale, and the birds make music all the day. The young folks play on the little cabin floor, all happy, all merry and bright. By and by, hard times come a-knocking at the door. Then my old Kentucky home, good night. I can go on.
I know, and it's good. But you're not in the entertainment business. You're in the restaurant business.
The restaurant business is entertainment.
I and that. But
it is. And when I used to feed people's hunger for news and information and entertainment, now I feed their hunger for food.
All right.
And there's hunger in the first world, too. You know?
We
get hungry 3 times a day.
We do.
And for the average person in America and in the world, the most pleasant thing they do every week is go out to dinner.
I agree with that, because it's a time...
It's even better than most basketball games.
Well, I don't know. What do you think of the Final Four? Who's your team?
I always think
Carolina?
I think it's great. I don't know.
You don't know?
I was going for Davidson.
I was, too.
You know, they were a good underdog.
Well, they were. They could have been the Cinderella team.
They could have, but they didn't.
Yeah,
you know, it's just like me and AOL. I could have been the Cinderella broadcaster. It was just, when I walked down, whatever, is it Avenue of the Americans?
Yeah,
no, Broadway. When I walk down Broadway, isn't Black Rock the CBS building there?
Right there on, no, so on
you know
6th
what
Avenue.
I sing as I walk by there?
What do you say?
I said, this nearly was mine. It was. I was just one move away from sweeping the board.
And it belonged to Bill Paley.
It was right there. I had, at one time or another, I had ABC, CBS, and NBC, different times, different networks. I could have bought all three of them at one time or another. And they somehow slipped through my hand, and I ended up with Time Warner instead.
So why did that happen?
I would like to say the fickle finger of fate, but I didn't make the right moves at the right time. 99% of the time, you know, I made the right moves, but I made one mistake, and that's the way it goes. But I'm not bitter about it. I'm getting along with life. I'm singing more in the shower.
Well,
at least I don't have to worry about the ratings of the television shows anymore.
Yeah. So before we leave television, let me have you assess CNN today. What do you think of it?
I don't think there's as much international coverage as I'd like to see, and there's both on headline news and CNN. There's too much, you know, the news from Iraq, and then It's just, to me, news should be more serious.
Right.
But what they're trying to do is get the ratings up by being, I don't know, what do you want to call it? More trivial. I don't know. More. They're hiring just gorgeous models. You know, they let Judy Woodruff go.
Right.
You know, because she's a little older. I bet she was a lot better journalist than some of these little chickies that they've got there. But you know, they're going with a cult of personality, whereas I tried to emphasize the news and hard news and lots of international news, and so people that watched the news were getting something out of it that would be of value to them in their lives. Most of what's on CNN now is a little too light for me, but I still watch it all the time because the other networks aren't much better.
And Lou Dobbs used to be a friend of yours.
He's still a friend of mine.
Yeah.
But they've, you know, I think he's kind of flipped out. You know, well, I wouldn't, Tom Johnson, I wouldn't let him do this when he was working at CNN. He just had to do the financial news straight, you know, and not fill it up with his opinions about who he hates and doesn't like the Mexicans and the immigration.
So what would you do if you were running CNN today?
I'd call him in and chew him out.
You would say either you toe the line or you can't work here.
That's exactly right.
That's what you'd do.
That's what we did before.
With him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having said that, he's a great talent, and I like him a lot. I mean, we're old fishing buddies. He likes me.
Why? Who doesn't like you?
Well, I don't know. Even you know, I buried the hatchet with Rupert.
How did you do it?
I don't know. He went green, and it was in the paper that he's going to be carbon neutral, and I dropped him a note saying, congratulations, that's great. So he immediately got back to me and said, let's have lunch. So I invited him to lunch at Ted's Montana Grill, and we basically tried to bury the hatchet as much as we can. He was the only person that I really had a vendetta with, and it's good to have it behind us, because I don't have any anger against anybody anymore. I've mellowed, really, and, you know, with my connections to the UN, I like everybody.
All right, well, let's just stay with Rupert for a second, because the kind of things that you two slung at each other was as bad as it could get, you know, suggesting... Oh, wait, what?
We never slung bullets at each other.
Well, no, I said
it never descended into fisticuffs, or I never pushed or shoved, and neither did he.
Well,
we verbally pushed
Was the word Hitler used?
Yeah, but not the, you know, just to describe some of his activities.
Hitler like...
You know, that was a little strong, I have to admit. But I was younger then, you know, and I've always suffered from foot-in-the-mouth disease.
Well, yes, that's true.
I've gotten a lot better, though. It's been a long time since anybody caught me saying something stupid.
All right, but let's take a moment at the meeting, which I didn't know about. So News Corp goes green, and you say, what a great idea. Finally,
well, I was green, too, but to have him come along with that is really good, because he's a very influential person.
Right, but you were on board before he was.
Oh, yeah, way
you've
before,
been an environmentalist for a long time. So you write him a note saying, hey, Rup,
congratulations, welcome to the club.
And he writes back and then says, let's have lunch.
Yeah.
See, that says a lot about him, too.
Well, he doesn't want to fight with me, either.
Because there's no need anymore.
That's right. He called me up once and said, Ted, this little tiff we're having is not good for either of us. Why don't we call it off? And I said, I'm not ready. And it lasted another 7 or 8 years.
10 years. Yeah. So might we see you two together now? Maybe you could do something together.
Well, I don't know. You know, he's our, you know, I haven't invited him to my 70th birthday. Maybe I ought to.
Oh, definitely you ought to.
You think so?
Absolutely.
He won't come.
Oh, he
no,
will
he
come.
will come.
He'll come.
Oh.
He will come.
I don't want to be, I'm not sure I want to be chummy with him.
He'll come to your 70th birthday.
I don't know.
Oh,
it's a long way to come.
Let's talk about let's assume that you have the ear and the concentration of the new president. And the new president comes to you and says, Ted,
what should I do?
What should I do? So first of all, you say what?
Win the election. He's already won the election. Or she has.
She has.
Okay.
Now, are you supporting either one? You're not supporting anybody, are you, by the way?
I'm sorry, what?
You're not supporting anybody.
I have not publicly, but I got in a habit when I was with CNN of not endorsing candidates, and I think it's a good policy because, first of all, I'm not an elected official, and I don't have any superdelegates or any of that stuff. Anyway, so it's best for me to keep my mouth shut on that. And I like to wait till near the end of the campaign to see what everybody has to say and try and keep an open mind anyway so I can choose based on full information rather than commit myself early on before I really know as much as I'd like to about the candidates' final positions on the major issues are.
Okay, first thing, we want the new president to think about what he's doing to the oceans. And
well, that would actually be a little further down the list.
Okay, first would be nuclear, I assume. Is nuclear first?
We got the most dangerous thing that we have facing this country and the world, because if something goes wrong and we have a nuclear exchange with our thousands of weapons that are already on hair trigger alert, we'll end life on Earth in one afternoon. So that could happen at any time. Only 6 months ago, that B-52 took off from its base in Nebraska and flew down to the Gulf Coast
with nuclear weapons on board.
Armed nuclear weapons ready to fire, and the pilots and none of the people on the airplane knew it. The bombs, the real bombs, the live bombs, looked just like the dummies that most of the rest of them. And so if something had gone wrong with that airplane, if it had crashed or had an accident, it could have been basically destroyed the Middle West of our country. And then just a couple of weeks ago, it hit the news that we had mistakenly sent a bunch of very sophisticated nuclear triggers to Taiwan by mistake. You know, I mean, we're just, we may just send a nuclear bomb to Osama bin Laden by mistake. You know, thinking it's just too damn dangerous. We're playing for all the marbles. So that's number one. I would rid the world of nuclear weapons, and that's what I said at the UN today. Number one priority is rid the world of nuclear weapons right away.
So let's tell me how...
And the rest of the world will go along with it.
So
I really believe that. All of them, because it's got to be done by everybody together.
So the United States says, the biggest problem facing the world is that too many nuclear weapons. We got to take all the nuclear weapons.
Too many.
We got to take all the nuclear weapons off the face of the planet, and we're going to
take the uranium and run it in nuclear power plants. We need more nuclear plants anyway, so we'll have
nuclear power plants are okay with you.
I'd rather have solar or wind, but if I had to choose between coal and nuclear, I'd rather have nuclear, because with coal, we know it's going to kill us. Yeah. And with nuclear, it just might kill us.
And how about fossil fuel in terms of
fossil fuels days are over.
Because there's not enough of it?
No, because it's too dangerous to burn, because it poisons the atmosphere.
Right. Got you there. I understand. Because, I mean, there's oil to be discovered.
You know, the incidence of asthma for children in our country is up 100%, is because of all the coal-burning plants and all the poisons in the atmosphere. We're poisoning our children and ourselves.
I understand that.
In China, you can't even move around. They're wearing face masks, and they're falling like flies. The air pollution is so bad. And even if global warming is not as serious as the best scientists' consensus is, even if it's not, when we convert over to clean, renewable energy, we'll at least clean up the air. And that's worth a hell of a lot. I mean, you know, it's extremely important.
And when somebody comes along and says, Ted, that sounds very good, and I'm in favor of that, but it will do dramatic injury to our economic growth.
Listen, what good is economic growth if you're dead from poison?
So you're saying...
when you're poisoning, it's just like Love Canal. Well, if you move from Love Canal, your value of your house goes down. Well, having a house at Love Canal, the value already went down. Everybody's dying of cancer on the block, you know? I mean, that's no good. No, you've got to take care of your health first, because What good is it
All
to be
right, so
rich?
basically anybody stands up...
If you're rich and unhealthy, that's no good.
Well, you know that's the reason the Chinese aren't doing as much as they have, because they believe that economic growth is necessary to deal with some other problems they have.
It's a conundrum.
Like disparities between the urban and the rural and poor and rich.
It's going to be the most complicated thing that we've ever done, because we have to work out an overall agreement with all the other 191 countries in the world that makes sense for the industrial rich world as well as the poor behind the poor developing world. We've got to come up with one agreement for the post-Kyoto agreement. We have 2 years to come up with it. They had a big meeting in Bali. It went pretty well, but the devil's in the details, and working this out is going to be extremely complicated. And the United States is going to have to take a leadership position this time. You know, we're the only country in the world, the only developed country in the world, that didn't sign on finally with the Kyoto Treaty.
Well,
finally, Australia signed up.
India and China didn't sign on.
Yes, they did. They didn't have to do anything, because at the time when Kyoto was first signed, the amount of pollutants they were putting, but they were exempted from the agreement. The developing world was exempted, since most of the emissions at that time were coming from the developed world.
Your health is in good shape.
Fairly good. I've got a pinched nerve in my back that's driving me nuts, but I can live with it.
And how about depression?
I don't have depression.
What do you have?
I have a moderate case of anxiety, but I've really got that under control.
You monitor that and just taking care of it.
I see a good friend of mine who's a psychiatrist, the head of psychiatry at Emory University, and I see him every month, mostly just to keep up to date. But I believe that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and I like to stay ahead of the game.
All right. Let's go back to the UN speech. And so nuclear proliferation, let's end all nuclear weapons, and the United States has to start.
Yes.
And every country, Israel has to come on board, and Pakistan has to come on board, and Russia has to come on board, and France,
Nigeria,
and China, and everybody.
Yeah.
All right. So you accomplished that. What's the second highest priority?
The second biggest thing is global climate change.
Okay.
We've got to, and for so many reasons, we've got to move off of fossil fuel. One is they are running out, and they will run out. They're going to get constantly more expensive. And particularly with oil, we don't have we don't have hardly any oil. So we're transferring all our wealth to the Middle East.
And we don't have refineries either, by the way.
Right, well, that's another thing. And security, for financial and military security, we need to be more self-sufficient in our fuel, because if we ever get another boycott, which could happen, like it did when Carter was president,
OPEC boycott.
We'll be stuck. So there are so many reasons why we need to do that. It'll be good for employment. We'll be employed hundreds of thousands of people here in the United States building new power plants that are solar and wind and possibly some nuclear plants. It'll be good for the economy. So getting a new energy regime is the second most important
What's
thing.
possible? Tell me what's
possible. It's possible
to do
that in 15 or 20 years we can completely redo it. If we have to mobilize, this is how important it is, and how important that we do it quickly. We have to mobilize the same way we did when we entered World War II in 1941. We have to fully mobilize everything we have and put it into changing the energy system over, and not just here in the United States, but all over the world. It's going to be the biggest business project in the history of the world. Fortunes, billions of dollars are going to be made. Hundreds of thousands of people are going to be employed. We're going to have clean air. We're going to have so many benefits from it. It's not going to cost us anything. Once we get going with it, it's not going to cost us anything. Only the people that don't understand it think it's going to. Not doing it will be catastrophic. We'll have 8 degrees. We'll be 8 degrees hotter in 30 or 40 years, and basically none of the crops will grow. Most of the people will have died, and the rest of us will be cannibals. Civilization will have broken down. What the few people who are left will be living in a failed state like Somalia or Sudan, and living conditions will be intolerable. The droughts will be so bad there'll be no more corn growing. Not doing it is suicide. Just like dropping bombs on each other, nuclear weapons is suicide. So we've got to stop doing the two suicidal things, which are hanging on to our nuclear weapons
and global
and then after that we've got to stabilize the population. When I was born, there were
what's wrong with the population? I mean,
with too many people. That's why we have global warming. We have global warming because too many people are using too much stuff.
But
if there were less people, they'd be using less stuff.
You know, in China, and what they worry about, not so much too many people.
They have a one-child family.
Exactly. And they worry about the demographics of their society.
Well,
everybody's old.
Japan worries more about that than China.
But China does too.
Well, everybody worries about it a little, but for a while, we're going to have a demographic slump or a hump where there are more old people. But we've got to stabilize population. On a voluntary basis, everybody in the world's got to pledge to themselves that 1 or 2 children is it.
Right.
And we've got to do that because otherwise, all the gains that we make in redoing our energy system are going to be erased by population increase. Of that 6.5 billion people in the world today, 2 billion are living in conditions that Americans would think was totally unacceptable. And I think they're unacceptable.
Unacceptable and intolerable.
Right,
absolutely.
That's absolutely right. And if you put 2 more billion people in here, the natural world is collapsing all around us. And global warming is just one manifestation of that. A few years ago, remember we had the hole in the ozone layer that was caused by CFCs. We're altering the climate and the world in so many different ways. And what we're doing is reducing the Earth's carrying capacity so that each year, the natural world gets poorer and less able to support the increasing number of people. We have a finite world, but an infinite ability to increase our population, and we've got to handle that. That's the next thing, and then fourth is to deal with the other environmental issues, of which overfishing of the ocean is one.
Right.
But basically, we've got to take better care of our planet. We have to move into a sustainable mode that we're living on the interest of the planet and not encroaching on the principle like we are today.
One of the things you haven't talked about is also our water's in trouble.
Well, exactly. Well, that's all part of it. Our air's in trouble and our water's in trouble. Absolutely.
I mean, fresh water.
And a lot of these climatologists that are very smart are predicting drought. Which drought means no rain. No rain means no grass. No grass means no cattle, no meat, okay? And it also means no corn. I mean,